Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome to my channel, Happiness Hacks for the Post Pandemic World from the universe of Lord Shri Krishna. Now, I have been noticing very interesting cross connections between the universe, the cosmology of Krishna's beautiful world, which was set in often in little villages with these cowherd girls and cows grazing the grass, and him always positioned in the Tribhanga pose under a tree, playing the flute, and all of nature rejoicing in the beauty of the vibrations of that flute music. Now, one of the interesting ways to view this post pandemic world is to see how it has taken us back into the bosom of Mother Nature. How many of our socialites, VIPs do we see posting from the Maldives, posting from Alibag, from Goa? How many businesses have actually shifted out of big urban centers and moved to beautiful vistas where they get to really feast their five senses on the aroma of flowers or of the rains hitting the parched earth and the unique fragrance that offers us. I felt it very much in Goa. I also made a quick escape to work from Goa for a bit. And just the joy of a sunset, sinking into this very restless and yet very, very rhythmic sea. The sea is like the human mind. There's always some new thought coming in, some old thought leaving us. Now, I'm going to today make some interesting cross connections between the human condition and why we are healed by nature, and how Krishna's world was also intimately linked with the beauty of nature. So I was reading this article on a survey, research by Barclays Investment Bank, which was basically looking at post-pandemic world trends. And one of the first things that they pointed out is that, of course, many effects will be felt long after the pandemic recedes, but measures will accelerate already established trends. Deglobalization. So instead of flitting around like butterflies and making holes in the ozone layer and being jet set and being really not very considerate about fossil fuels, and like how Greta Thunberg had urged people, and she took the sea route to the conference where she spoke about what's happening to the planet. So she did it as a young child, hoping that she would still have a planet that's alive when she's older. But this is a market trend that if there is fear of falling sick, then reduced global travel will be a part of the scheme of things. Automation. So more and more we're going to rely on technology to do the job, so that we are not passing infections to each other. And that is part of the fear psychosis, but it will have a positive fallout, because as technology gets better and better, our interactions will not require fossil fuel journeys by car and journeys that are polluting the air. Instead, we'll be meeting in immersive Zoom formats where you can literally do the beam me up Scotty from Star Trek, and maybe your three-dimensional relay of the image will be so real that it'll be like that person is right in front of you. By the way, in Krishna's day, they had non-polluting air vehicles, because I was just reading about when he wanted to exit, and he took the gopis, and he went to fetch Radha. And this was a divine air vehicle that lifted them and took them to Devalok, to Gulok or Guluk, I don't remember the name, but they took them to Krishna's realm, and non-polluting vehicle. And of course, sustainability is now going to be the need of the hour. So this fabric had come to me from a label that claimed Tattva, that claimed to be fully upcycling and recycling. And deurbanization. So like we saw, of course, it was tragic. All the labor forces in the cities were forced to go back to their villages. Some may have even felt that it's better to focus on agricultural activity than be in an uncertain environment where you're sleeping under concrete and you don't know what tomorrow brings. For the elite, deurbanization simply meant buying a holiday home in a more beautiful, natural, green, nurturing sort of space. So these are 4 key trends that, now we will look at them from the point of view of India's spiritual culture. Now, if you go to the name Vrindavan, the word Vriksh represents a tree. And in Vrindavan, the term Vrin, the root came from Vriksha. Krishna was so loved by even the forces of nature, and he was always associated with nature. So all the famous poems by Jayadeva, all the miniature paintings that you see, they always position Krishna in the first half of his life as almost a creature of nature. There are beautiful metaphors about how Radha would risk her life, she would risk being bitten by the snakes when she ventured out in the heart of the night from a nearby village. So apparently she didn't even live in Vrindavan, she lived in a nearby village. She was 5 years older than Krishna and married elsewhere. Okay, and this is the mystery of Krishna's bond with all the gopis. So she was the queen of the gopis, but all the gopis apparently had husbands and didn't really seem to think of it as any kind of aberration. The moment he would, on a full moon night, prepare them for the Ras Leela, it was a special Ekadashi night that he would want everybody to rally together for the dance, the sacred Ras Leela dance. And it is said that these gopis were so entranced by the flute. And think of the flute, it is purely wood carved with a certain kind of dimensionality that channels the wind, and it is hollow, and therefore the Lord can play his music on this very natural instrument. And I believe Krishna also told a lot of his bhaktas that if you remain pure and empty, you are allowing me to play a melody on you. You are allowing me to play my melody through you. And this is something even some Chinese philosophers said about the bamboo, that human beings, if they were like the bamboo, then the universe could play its music through them. So as I'm learning, I'm doing the Ashtavakra Gita, which was a narration of the Gita in peaceful circumstances by a sage who had 8 bodily defects, and hence he was known as Ashta, which means 8, Vakra, 8 defects. And he speaks to King Janaka about beautiful messages for our times from the Bhagavad Gita, or they call it the Ashtavakra Gita. So to get back to the topic, the Nidhivan forest in Vrindavan is, to hardcore devotees who never doubt Krishna stories, that the forest itself is a visual play on the Ras Leela. So the trees are all intertwined as pairs, and of course after dark everything is locked. There are 7 different locks around the sacred forest of Nidhivan, and nobody dares to go, nobody knows what's happening, but the assumption is the Ras Leela comes to life at night. Every monkey leaves, every bird, every insect. By day, if you go there, the trees are hollow, but they flourish, just like you see the leaves around me. The top of the trees are fully alive, and they don't need nurturing from the earth. So there is definitely a miracle that is visible in Vrindavan. Now, why does Krishna have such a sense of lightness of being and fun? And why is that a post-pandemic truism? Why do we need to learn that from Krishna? So we've come across several articles and YouTube videos talking about how young school kids in America, 57% of them are chronically depressed. Young children, they have their whole life ahead of them, young adolescents. We're hearing of suicide rates going up, and we've heard that the pandemic has only increased these numbers, not decreased it in any way, because there was much more isolation. So what does Lord Krishna, or what does the Ashtavakra Gita say about the phenomenon of depression? So a lot of this, when you lose your job and you feel, okay, of what use is my life? Am I going to be able to do anything after this? So the answer one gets is, if you go deep within, you will find a universe that is dreaming 24/7. And you are also part of that dream. You're also co-creating that dream. So whether you want to accept it, acknowledge it or not, you are a part and parcel of God's dream. And it is up to you to tune into a positive dream and to weave the threads, weave new threads constantly. So maybe 5 ventures, 3 ventures did not go the way you wanted them to. But that is not failure. According to the Ashtavakra, if you have learned from that, if you have walked the path of evolution from that, then it was not wasted. And therefore there is no need for you to feel down, depressed and out. Look at nature. There's always death. In autumn, the leaves are always falling to the ground. But then what do we see a few months from autumn? Spring. In about 4 to 5 months, new leaves are sprouting. So humanity needs to learn from nature that one should always re-dream one's reality and always focus on evolution as the goal, not wealth. And always focus on servitude. Like, one of the biggest ways to heal from depression is seva. So they've done experiments where they've asked people to work consistently to serve humanity in some way, and then done their blood test to see what is going on in their mind-body system. And they would find definitely that the hormones that are generated by doing seva are saving us. The word seva has a very interesting pun. It's save our souls. That is seva. That just came to me. Thank you, God. And so reality is not something you only take in at the eye level. Okay? You have to understand a lot of what you think is happening through your 5 senses is only an illusion. But as you go to the source, as you meditate more and more, you're allowing the divine intelligence to play its music through you. And you will soon find that a lot of things that felt tedious or a lot of things that you wondered about ever accomplishing will start falling into place in a very nice flow. So think of even Lord Krishna. Now, another very interesting principle from Krishna's body language that we can observe is when he was playing the flute, his body was not in a completely sort of karate kind of alignment. It was slightly bent over with one hip swinging out, feet crossed. And that was his comfort pose. And it is known as the Tribhanga pose. Now, what is the beauty of Tribhanga? It shows flexibility. So he had sort of a very beautiful balance of the yin and the yang, where he was a warrior because he fought. I mean, he was a charioteer in the humanity's most extensive fratricidal war. And so he was capable on the battlefield. He had to kill Kansa to relieve the negativity that Kansa was bringing to humanity. But in the early part of his life, when he was attuned with beauty, with womankind, with nature, with music, with nature miracles, he was in a very flexible state. So when you live in a world where so much is so uncertain, then you have to remain leaning more towards a flexible state of mind, body and spirit. Like one of the things that I read in this Barclay's research is it's never now a when it happens. Okay, earlier we would be preparing ourselves for a when this happens, then we do that. Today it's not when this happens, it is what if. It's a what if world because we still don't know what to expect to a very large extent. And I think that is a very powerful thought in which we should reside for some time. So keep in mind that flexibility will not break you, but if you're brittle and you refuse to pivot, look at the number of people who've shifted gears. Fashion designers were doing catering, okay, writers were building online communities. That's what I've been doing for a new property. People have been pivoting into many new directions that they never thought they would get into. Live gigs, people who are living on the economy of live entertainment have either pivoted into yoga or other things that they're doing, teaching, or have become online teachers. You know, they've all mastered the Zoom methodology and they all have global students now. Students who can tune in from anywhere around the world. So when the universe takes one thing away, It is doing it with a certain wisdom, but it is also giving you something else, and it is up to you to recognize that. And never hold on in regret, in sorrow, because that's a trap. The more you're holding on to grudges, the more you're holding on to a lack of ability to forgive and move on, the more it becomes, what you resist is what will persist. And considering you're already dealing with so much, do you really want to carry so much baggage? My guess is that you're not. So I will end on that note. And of course, there's a lot more wisdom that I want to share with you. But think of Lord Krishna and the Tribhanga pose, okay? And think of how, the pandemic adds new focus on resilience from just in time to just in case. So the mentality that now will dominate us is not that we need to do something just in time, but we need to have a backup plan just in case. And see, Krishna was also very prepared for that. He was very prepared. He was Draupadi's backup rescuer. When her sari was being unraveled by Dushashan in the court of the Kauravas, he became her default rescuer. And he wasn't even there in physical form. So surrender, and as you surrender, you will start discovering that Krishna and his infinite wisdom comes to life in your life. And he will be your charioteer. He will be the hand, the invisible hand that's holding your hand. Just go into your life with that synergy, with that meditative spirit, with that love of peace and that love of humor and lightness in being. And a lot of that you will automatically imbibe if you read any of the Krishna Leelas, the games that he played, the fun that he had. Life was never meant to be serious. And if you remember, Osho, the great philosopher, said, seriousness is cancer of the soul. Do not get into that vibe, and do not believe that things are going to last. Everything is constantly moving. If today your circumstances are not everything you're hoping for, trust me, change is on the way. But lighten up. Lighten those vibrations. Watch anything that makes you happy, makes you laugh, and share. As much as you can, share with the world, and you will see transformation. And that is the wisdom from the world of Lord Krishna for our post-pandemic times for today. I hope you enjoyed.